Hello and welcome to Makers.dev, episode at number 121. Chris, did you know that 121 is 11 squared?
I did.
Do you know the trick for multiplying any two-digit number by 11?
I used to. I would multiply by 10 and add that number.
Oh yeah, that would also work. The trick that I know that I'm going to make you relearn is you take the number, whatever the number is, and you split it. And then you add those two numbers together in the middle, and then that's the number. So multiplying 11 by 11, you split 11, so you got one on the left and one on the right, and a space in the middle. And then you add 1 and 1, and that makes 2. But that works for any number. If we said 32, you split 32, so we have 3 blank 2. And then you add 3 and 2 in the middle, and you get 5. So it's 352.
What about 132?
It only works for two-digit numbers.
Okay.
Okay. There's another method for three-digit numbers, and I don't know what it is.
Add a 0 and add the number to itself. That's
that would also. Yeah, your method is much more general. that makes a lot more sense.
Cool.
How are you?
Nice tip.
Yeah.
Nice tip.
Thank you. Trying to make it more practical.
Yeah.
Probably still not engaging enough for most of our listeners, but you know what? Maybe this podcast is just for me and you. Maybe we don't care about engagement.
Anyway, I'm doing all right. We my wife and I are planning a trip to Iceland. This year was our 15th wedding anniversary, and it's also her sister's 15th wedding anniversary. And so the four of us are going to drive around the country. It takes about 17 hours. We're doing it over like 9 days or something. No kids. Should be great.
That sounds awesome. I would say it sounds cool, but the pun would be intended.
Yeah. Anyway, so as part of that, I have been researching camera gear, which is one of my favorite hobbies is to research camera gear.
Yeah.
I bought an action camera for it also.
Which one?
The Insta 360, the 360
Cool.
one. So we'll see. That should be fun. It's also like generally I want to take more videos of my kids, like we do short iPhone videos, but it seems like a very unobtrusive way to take, family videos, because you just kind of clip it somewhere and it just does it, and then you figure it out later. So Figure out what am I trying to say? Which direction it's pointing later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And also the field of view, you can change. It's like a dynamic. Like you can make it a fisheye lens, or you can make it a more zoomed lens. Yeah, I feel like recording 360 video is probably the most feature-proof way right now of recording memories. Like in the olden times when people had the old cameras, and it was very strange to have a video camera. That old footage, that's video footage, is now precious. Like my mom's entire childhood was recorded on this 8mm. Like I think the camera style was one of the ones where you roll it, but I'm not actually. They had batteries. So it might not have been, but her entire childhood only has something like 2 or 3 hours of video recorded of it. My kids are going to have like their entire maybe except for when they're sleeping, unless I save the nanny cam footage, they could like relive their entire childhood. So yeah, I think it's particularly cool to be recording things now in what's probably going to be the future format of those videos. I could imagine future people with their Apple Vision Pros watching regular iPhone recorded videos, and that feels very outdated and olden, in the same way that watching black and white video now at a lower frame rate feels old. But then when they watch a 360 video, they'll be like, whoa, this is cool. This is like more of a modern format, but how strange that it's depicting a time that's way further in the past. So yeah, cool.
Yeah. So that's basically what I've been doing. I've been doing work stuff. Kaggle hasn't released any new competitions yet, so I'm sort of waiting for those. I have been working a little bit on the American Sign Language one, but you have to make it a TensorFlow Lite model that's less than 40 megabytes, so that it can run on like a phone. And that adds enough friction that it makes it a pretty weird competition to work on for me. So yeah, I might just wait for the next ones to come out.
Okay.
Yeah, other than that, I've had a relatively chill week. Yeah.
Chill. What's the status of the master's program? Are you taking the summer off or?
Yeah, summer off till next fall. Yeah.
Okay.
They offer very limited selection of classes in the summer, and they only offer 3, and I've taken all 3. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. What I should have done, I think I said this before. You can have up to 2 classes that you take at another university apply towards your degree, and there's a few that are like pre-qualified basically of online ones, and you take those pass fail. So it seems like a lot less work because I only need like a C or something. And then it just comes over pass fail. So I should have done that, but I didn't realize in time. So that's all right.
Cool. Yeah, I could imagine the min-max strategy for that being that you take the hardest classes at another university and then they're just pass fail.
Yeah, well, they can be anything. It's basically all electives. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't take a required class at another university. The required classes you have to take at UT Austin or online. Yeah.
Okay, I see. I'm reminded of in college, I was astounded that some of the people I talked to, I think I had a really good advisor, and I was also not afraid of taking like 23 hours a semester. So I was able to, yeah. But like I graduated on time with a bunch of extra classes and had a bunch of time to do like extracurricular electives, and I saw people going through the same sort of program that were making mistakes that felt pretty trivial. Like it was the sort of thing you're describing of like, do I take this class or this class first? That ended up costing them another semester at the end of it, or worse. And if you mix into that they're trying to take the minimal number of hours, so it's extra important that they're doing this efficiently, and they're failing some classes, so like that kind of throws everything up in the air and makes it much harder. Like this very expensive process of getting a degree becomes so the cost of mistakes is much higher. It becomes exponentially more expensive, and I'm not convinced that the motivation of a guidance counselor is for the student. I could like that the guidance counselor works for the university. If the guidance counselor is creating additional semesters where students are attending the university, that's good for the university. The incentive for the guidance counselor is kind of to be a bad guidance counselor and not teach you the most effective, efficient way to go through the program. Yeah, it just
maybe if you're a bad guidance counselor, but
okay.
Like our academic advisors were all professors, and like you could rate them, and so if they gave you bad advice, like that was very bad for them. So in that way, they were very much aligned to give you the best advice they could. But a lot of the advice was, here is a spreadsheet that this is the plan that we think you should follow. If you have any questions, ask me. And like they wouldn't go out of their way to make sure every student was doing the optimal thing. Like it was your job as a student to make sure that you were doing the right thing. But you could always go to office hours, and they were more than willing to, help you figure out what the optimal thing was. But it was all up to the student. So, yeah, you got to learn to be an adult, basically, and keep track of your own, progress and options.
In that sense, I guess it's useful in the same way that university is useful for preparing you for the real world. This is the first set of decisions that you have autonomy over that have real consequences, and in the scale of life, I guess the consequences are still like it's more responsibility than you ever had in undergrad, but it's still less than you'll have in real life. Like the choice of which classes to take in which order are going to have a smaller impact on your life than which job do you accept, which state do you move to.
Right. There's also, in colleges, it's also very easy to accidentally get into bad situations, especially like the one I'm thinking of is if you want to switch majors. There's often like a cutoff semester where you switch from like general required and elective classes to very major specific ones. And if you just sort of go with the flow and then decide later that you want to switch, you basically waste entire semesters. And so like if you know kind of what that cutoff semester is, that where all of those classes will still apply to other majors, then you can make more decisions earlier. So like, yeah, there are proactive ways that guidance counselors could be helping. Like say, if you want to switch majors, you better do it before the third semester, or else you whatever, stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm reminded of an essay by Derek Sivers that's included in his book, Anything You Want, called The Standard Pace is for Chumps. That talks about the story of he was about to attend Berkeley for music, and he ran into a professor who was either a current professor at Berkeley or a retired professor. And he was telling the professor, oh yeah, I'm about to go to Berkeley. And the professor said, if you know what you're doing, you could get through the 4-year plan in under 2 years. And Derek Sivers was like, really? Could you teach me how to do that? And the professor was like, yeah, show up at my house at 7 a.m. on Monday. And Derek was like, okay. And he went to his house and knocked on his door at 7 a.m. And the professor was like, oh, hi. And apparently the professor had like extended this offer to a few people in the past and no one had actually taken him up on it. But then what the professor did was basically just give him this fire hose of information as quickly as Derek was able to pick it up that covered basically the first 2 years of the curriculum at Berkeley, and he was able to cover it in just a few months, like rigorously taking notes and like keeping track of stuff as fast as he could, and getting the information streamlined for Derek from this professor that could sense where Derek was in his level of learning. But the meta lesson that Derek learned from that is, if you know where you're going, you can get there much faster. If you have a direction of like, I'm trying to complete this program, the standard accepted pace of how long it takes to get there is designed for people who are just kind of stumbling along and aren't trying to get there as quickly as possible. But if you have any sort of self-directed ambition of actually wanting to get there, you can sort of throw the standard timeline out the window and get there as fast as you want. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah. There's a couple interesting things to say about that. One is that will either work very well for people or they will completely burn them out and you won't know which it is until you're through it. And so, yeah, I can imagine people following that advice and like getting to the end and being completely burned out. So that's something interesting.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing specifically about college is that advice applies to you if you're going to college to get a degree in order to, get a job or whatever. Often what the purpose of college, I can't remember where I heard this, but someone famous was saying this, is not to do that, but instead it's to be an adult for 4 years with no responsibilities. It's like you're switching from high school to adulthood. Going to college is a perfect excuse to not have real world responsibilities. And so if you cut that short, then you basically you're self-sabotaging this time to not have real responsibilities short. Now for some people, some people really want to get started, and so sure, do that. But also don't feel too bad if you don't. In my college career, I went really hard early, and so I think maybe the entire year, I only took 3 classes a semester, and one was senior project. That was an amazing year. Like, yes, I probably could have smushed it all into the year before that or something like that, but I had a great senior year because I was taking electives, and only 2 of them really per semester plus senior project. So I think that's totally fine too. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And the backdrop of this is, the pace that you're moving at is the correct pace. I choose to be fatalistic about the past. So like the way that things have happened is the only way they could have happened. It's the way they were supposed to happen. So yeah, I think it's equally a mistake to try to judge yourself for not going fast enough. I think that the core thing is, if you'd like something different than what's happening, that there are options available to you to change the future, but you can't change the past. I also like the idea of college as a sort of initiation ritual, that it's a rite of passage in our society. I think that's the closest thing we have in nomadic cultures. They'll do things like, you're a young boy, you're going to come out and hunt with us, and you're going to kill a tiger, and that's what's going to mark your ascent into adulthood. You've passed from being a child to being an adult. And what we have in Western culture is you go to college. It's a nice, easy 4-year ramp of like, I like that framing of that you're an adult with no responsibilities. Yeah, but you're incrementally taking on those responsibilities. And then that's your transition into adulthood. Yeah. Yeah. So I could see cutting that short would be suboptimal holistically. That part of the value of that is that it is a 4-year ramp to be able to adjust to adult life. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I did this week.
Cool.
Which is not very much. Yeah. How about you?
I wanted to say one more thing about the 360 camera, which is, have you experienced, you have an Oculus also?
Yeah.
Have you experienced watching 360 video in the Oculus?
Yeah. So my kids and I did, there's like a deep sea one, and there's, I think the ISS, this in space had one. Yeah. So we did those, but we haven't done, maybe we also did like the Mayan temples, something like that. So we've done a few. Yeah.
Have you done any of videos that you've recorded?
No.
It's wild. It's as close as possible to being able to relive a memory and feeling like you're actually there, because you can see things that you didn't see when you were there. You have autonomy, but you can't like move around on the X, Y, Z plane, but you can rotate in any direction you want. And one of the first trips I did this for seriously was this climbing trip I took in Mexico with my friend Luke. And I was able to, like, when I got back from the trip, I was able to replay it for my wife and for my family. And like, they now have memories of being on that trip with me. Like they got to feel what it was like and see this drop off of this cliff of exactly how high up I was. And you know, watching them rewatch the video was so funny, because there were like moments in the video where they all had the same sort of reaction. Like, you know, they're here watching me on the cliff, and then they look down, and then they're like, "Oh my God, you're so high up!"
Yeah.
And then they look back up and say, "Oh my God, you're only connected by this thin little strip of titanium. What are you doing?" And then they look out and they're like, "Oh wow, it's actually beautiful. I see why you do this." But it's a very different experience than you know, watching it on a tiny phone screen, or even watching it on a tiny, relatively gigantic 80-inch TV screen. It's not just that one thing; it's your entire field of view. You feel like you're transported. So a 360 camera combined with a VR headset, I feel like, is this killer combination of there's I hate this word, but there's like synergy there that you're able to accomplish effectively, you know, memory capture and replaying experiences, how you live them, which I think is really cool. I'm excited for you to be able to capture Reykjavik or Iceland. I imagine you're flying into Reykjavik, wherever you're going in Iceland. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah. Basically, everyone flies into it. Well, they call it Reykjavik. It's actually south. Keflavik Airport. Yeah. Anyway, and then we're driving around the whole thing. So, yeah, that's cool. I anticipated being able to pan around and stuff and making whatever film I wanted, but I didn't even think about the VR experience, which is cool. So now I'm even more excited. Yeah. We were talking just before this about. So I'm looking at all this photography gear, and I'm like, why even bother? Like, every bit of Iceland has been captured a million times by every photographer ever. But it's different, I think, especially like, you know, having action cam above all of us while we're hiking or something. I think will be a very neat thing. So
yeah, it's not like, if the goal of going to Reykjavik was to see what it looks like, you wouldn't need to fly there. You could just watch YouTube videos or watch 360 video that someone else had already done. Yeah. I for the purpose of travel for me is like to go through the experience. After having gone through travel, I feel changed as a person. I feel like putting myself in unfamiliar environments and uncomfortable situations like stresses me in ways that help me grow as a person. And then the purpose of capturing that for me is like, it's not the picture that I took of the Eiffel Tower. It's that picture is now a totem for me of like, oh, I can be transported back to, you know, here's where I was in my life, and here's what I was thinking and feeling, and you know, during that day, here's what I was doing, and it becomes memorable, and cumulatively, my life becomes richer because of more of those sorts of memories that I'm able to make, and more of those connections. And then because I have that fresh, I can like make comparisons and better make stories and say, oh, you know, this problem I have in building my company is just like the time I was in Iceland and was trying to climb up the mountain, and let me like revisit that exact memory, and here I am transported. This is the lesson that I learned here, and now I can apply it in this new situation. So yeah, that's how I frame it.
Yeah, cool. I was recently going through some old photos, and some of my favorite ones I've taken are actually, they're not of, you know, big sightseeing things or even of people, although the people ones are nice, but it's like small little just memories, I guess, you know, like little things, little objects or something that remind me of whatever. So underrated thing to do on vacation. Take photos of small detailed things, I think. Yeah,
I like it. What did I get to this last week? I have 1, 2, 3 sort of, and then five things I want to cover.
Cool.
The first one is a update on fileinbox. I probably announced in the last episode that I had finished the Google Drive integration. I had not finished the Google Drive integration. Several things broke later that day, and I spent like the next day and a half-ish fixing those. But now it's finished.
Excellent.
And it's nice, and it's all buttoned up, and in the process of it, I realized that Google changed the way that they handle serverless functions underneath me, and so there were some bugs introduced by that when I tried to migrate over, but those are fixed now, and I actually like the new system better. And it has higher capacity, like the functions can have more memory and they can run for longer. yeah, so that's done. And then I started working on theming, which is the next thing on my to-do list. And I am loving it. Like I feel like I'm scratching this itch that I've had for so long of feeling frustrated and not proud with the current version of fileinbox. And I'm just making it so nice. Like something I've wanted forever is a live preview of what your actual form looks like. And then as you're changing the colors, it's live changing what the actual page looks like. And that was just impossible to do on Rails because the form is rendered as this. It's not a component. It's a page, like an ERB template. Mm-hmm. So to be able to do it, I was playing around with all sorts of like, it's an iframe, but I need to be able to inject JavaScript, and then I need some way to like update specific parts of the page. It was just a mess, and added all sorts of complexity if I tried to do anything extra special. And with the new framework, because my upload page is just a component, well, I can include that component in my little template of where the theming is. And then anything I'm changing, because it's just changing this underlying Firebase managed page document, I just get the live updates for free. It just happens. And so, like, of course, the colors are going to automatically update, but then also, why not be able to change every piece of text on the page, like what the send button says? And that's also now fixing this problem that I've had of internationalization. So I had this as a whole separate to-do, but I'm kind of doing both of them at once now, because by people being able to change the words on every single part of the page, well, okay, if you want to translate it into Spanish, here's my Spanish pack of like, you can hit this button and automatically get the whole page translated into Spanish. Or if you don't like my translations, or if you want to translate it into Icelandic, which I'm not going to have a language pack for, you just type in the text, just any text you want for the button. If you want to have it better match your brand, you can do that. Like, it solves so many problems all at the same time. And yeah, I'm reminded that I think I lost this thread for a little bit. And then sort of got distracted by, I don't love distracted. I started working on the video clipper and ignored development on fileinbox for a while. And I feel like I've recaptured that thread on fileinbox of feeling really excited about this new development and really building something that I feel really proud of. Like, the product is really good and it solves a lot of problems that I used to feel really frustrated with. So that's not done yet. And I don't know how much longer it's going to take. I originally budgeted 4 days. Oh, and actually, if I finished today, I'd be on target. But I'm not going to finish it today. Probably, I don't know, another day or two. So, less than the 10 times more time than it took to do the Google Drive integration, but still a little longer than I was anticipating. So that's my update with fileinbox.
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like this is, like we said, integrations are extremely difficult and hard to predict. This sounds like much more predictable, and so that's good. And you get internationalization done also. Did you have that budgeted for some amount of time?
Yeah, I did. How much? I think that was like a day or two. Yeah, a day, which I think was overly optimistic, but yeah. So if I consider that I'm doing both of those things at the same time, I'm probably totally on track. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yep.
Yeah. It feels great. I also had another call with Asia from Demand Maven about the higher level business stuff. I thought that was going to be our last meeting. I thought that she was going to deliver the final thing and the roadmap of what I needed to do. She has a ton of stuff going on, and she has actual clients who are actually paying her tons of money. So I totally understand my stuff gets kicked to the back burner. And actually, I prefer it because I think like the longer we're working together, the more value I'm getting out of it. But we did have a fascinating conversation that got recorded as a podcast, and I'm not sure yet if what's going to happen with that. It's probably going to get published in her podcast. I might talk to you about cross-posting all of those or parts of those on this podcast. I think the overlap would make sense for this audience. I have a question for the audience, actually. After in the beginning saying I don't care about you, I do care about you. If you have an opinion on like where you would like to see those interviews or hear them, if it would make sense for you as like a mini series on this podcast, or if you just want us to link to it on Asia's podcast, I'm just curious your feelings as a listener on that. It's 5 roughly hour-long conversations that I've had with Asia. That is her consulting process that she usually charges $20,000 for, and she's walking me through how to grow fileinbox and asking me questions of trying to figure out what those things are. And you can hear me in real time have the realizations of the insights that she's saying. And yeah, it's roughly weekly check-ins. So if you have an opinion on that, please reach out to me or Chris. Let us know, and that'll inform what we end up doing. So in that call, I did have this realization of it came from this frustration that I've had of like not knowing who to focus on fileinbox as a demographic. And Aisha actually gave a talk about this of don't niche down, but focus temporarily on a particular niche. But that's still an idea that I've had a lot of trouble with because there's so many different types of people who are using this. It's one of the most recent customer interviews I did was with this professor, and he was using fileinbox as a replacement for Blackboard, which is this terrible software that all universities use for course management and stuff. But that's a completely different niche, it felt like to me at the time, than loan officers who care about totally different things. And the job that I'm doing for them is replacing like loan management software. And that's a totally different job from, a photo printer who's using it to replace like Kodak stuff. So we talked a lot about that on the last episode, or the last call that I had with her. And she is helping to reframe that for me of like, a niche doesn't necessarily have to be like a profession. A niche can be more of a horizontal niche of like a use case. So I can be abstracting and thinking a little bit more generally of like the sort of person who fileinbox is for is someone who feels frustrated by collecting files from their clients or customers who, because their clients or customers are very technically unsavvy, so they feel like they have to babysit them. And they want to do so getting the files in a secure way that minimizes work on their end. And like that's and they are more of a DIY person. Like they're more comfortable, either themselves or someone more technical within their business is comfortable assembling a like a no code DIY solution to problems. And they're the sort of person who doesn't like to use the industry standard software because of how inflexible it is. They like to make their own solution that's a better, easier solution, both for them and for the people they're trying to get files from. That describes every good customer on fileinbox. And so like focusing at that layer, Asia's making the case that might be more useful for me than focusing on just loan officers or just photo printers. Because if I'm focused at that layer, that's something that benefits everyone. And now I can think about things in terms of I don't necessarily care that I have a feature that automatically imports all of your Blackboard student data, but I can focus at the level on like white labeling is really important to a lot of people. So what are features that would make white labeling better? Well, I could have subdomains. I could have better embeds. I could have when you save the page to your phone, it's a native mobile app, and that's now something that's going to benefit everyone, and doesn't preclude this idea that I can have focused landing pages for each of these verticals. And I can have my landing page for academics that says, hey, Blackboard sucks. Here's a way that you can use fileinbox to replace parts of Blackboard. And my landing page for loan officers that says, hey, industry standard software sucks. here's a better way to do it. And your pain, the way that you're describing it, is going to sound different, but the core underlying product I can be developing for this horizontal use case of people who are at work who have this particular problem of trying to collect software. So that idea I felt like was a breakthrough for me of I've struggled so much with not liking the idea of just arbitrarily picking a vertical and focusing on a horizontal vertical clicked for me. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that all sounds good. There's one thing I heard you say, which is kind of just a very subset of what you said, which is something like your users have users who are not tech savvy or something like that. Whenever I think about niching down like this, I would avoid saying things that are like could be perceived as a slight against anyone. Instead, you could say something like, without all the hassle of more complicated solutions or whatever, make it turn anything negative into a positive. But otherwise, yeah, that sounds great. Just make sure every way that you niche down is positive. And that sounds good.
I hear that, and for sure there's going to be a filter for me, like when actually writing copy for a landing page. And I feel like I've only done 5 of these mom test style interviews so far, and I feel like in most of them, there is a very negative sentiment towards like people feel really frustrated that the people they're trying to get files from are stupid. And that's like, they're not saying the word stupid, but that's the sentiment that I'm getting from them.
So that may be, but when those people then go look at FileInbox and it says, your stupid users can't figure out how to upload files,
right?
Then they're not going to want to use it either.
Yes.
So
So at the level of like writing it down, I do want to be reframing it in more positive ways. I think that's very good feedback. But I like that language and that framing is coming from the people who I'm talking to. Like there is this sort of disdain and frustration, particularly the professor to his students. Actually. Not unfairly so, not necessarily more than anyone else I talk to, but noted. That I would.
There's also, as sort of an aside, but almost certainly the students aren't technically illiterate or anything. They just have other stuff they care about. Like they just want to do the minimum possible thing to get the file uploaded so that it can be graded or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
That's all they care about.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting way to frame it for your feature set too. Like that's kind of like, imagine your user is drunk and then make it so they can't do the wrong thing.
Yes.
Kind of same thing.
Yeah. That's a more positive framing. Make it as easy as possible so that your uploaders don't have to think. So that without thinking, you're sure that everyone's going to do it the correct way. Yeah. Cool. Next thing, I found myself writing this really long blog post about Firebase. And my initial motivation for doing this was just to have my own internal notes of how Firebase stuff worked. We talked about this forever ago, but like, I think in the context of you teaching yourself linear algebra, that keeping working notes of learning things is valuable, not just for me, but now that it's on the internet, it could potentially benefit other people. So this Firebase article started like that. And now it's becoming this article that in the first part is justifying my rationale for why I feel like Firebase is the best way for me to develop apps. And then in the second part is like the only parts of Firebase that you should care about. Also without the framing from the official documentation that's more corporate-y, like they can't really say anything bad about it. I have no qualms trashing the parts of Firebase that I think are bad. So I feel like I'm able to say things much more succinctly and tell you what the good ways are of doing things. And I think I've found myself in writing this article, writing it for you. You know how when you write things, you're supposed to frame it as like you're writing it for a particular person? I think I'm writing it for you. I think I'm writing it for someone who like might know about the existence of Firebase, but you haven't tried it, and you have your traditional way of doing things that's more of a like Rails stack or something like that. Laravel becoming much more popular. So I think I'd just like to chat for you a little bit about my current thesis of like why I think Firebase is a great platform to be developing apps on, and I'd like to hear your objections and questions you'd like to see answered in Firebase. Okay, so high level, I have 3 reasons that I think make Firebase the most compelling platform to use, 3 advantages of using it this way, and then 3 disadvantages. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Start with, so you said you want to write it for people like me.
Mm-hmm.
What is your intention? Do you want to make me a convert? Do you want to just inform me what's going on? What's your higher level goal?
I'd like to introduce you to the possibility that you could use Firebase as an alternative platform for developing stuff. I'd like for you to be aware that it exists and consider it for future things that you build.
Okay, cool.
Okay, high level advantages to using Firebase. Ongoing maintenance is effectively 0. A huge pain point that I've had of the traditional way of maintaining Rails apps, particularly the way I'm doing it, trying to minimize costs. I buy VPSs and I self-host them with Doku, which is like a self-hosted Heroku. There's always something breaking. Like there's the Heartbleed bug that I got to go in and manually upgrade all my servers, or my Postgres database isn't automatically scaling, so I got to go in and change that, or I got to do something to upgrade Rails and it's a major security vulnerability, or some SSL thing is broken. And there's none of that on Firebase. If I've built my app in a way that works, it's Google's just going to make sure it continues to work and scale no matter what. That's the first point. Ongoing maintenance is effectively zero. That's especially beneficial to me as a solo developer. I don't have a whole team working on this. I like to be able to build stuff and just set it and forget it. And there are apps on Firebase that I've built that have been smoothly chugging along for years without me touching them. And that's not true of anything that I built on any other stack. Second thing is my costs.
Go ahead.
Do you want me
to respond to these as you go?
Please,
or,
yeah, if you got a response.
My initial thought is I've effectively solved this with Heroku because I just pay them and things work. I've had apps on there which has worked for years. So saying something has worked for years may or may not be that interesting. What I'm more interested in is you say ongoing maintenance. What about security updates and stuff like that? So like if I have to update Rails, like you had to recently, like that's a kind of major issue. Also, if you say ongoing maintenance is effectively zero, I basically don't believe that. Like I like there are going to be updates to the API and I'm going to have to do something like that's just going to happen over years, especially with, APIs don't stay stable for years and years with no changes. So maybe a little more nuance there. Like, what do you mean by effectively zero maintenance? What about security updates? Stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, that's good feedback. I could talk specifically about security updates, like comparing the Rails upgrade process, which is painful.
Yeah. I believe you that it's less work, but I don't believe that is no work.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Cool. I can go to more nuance there. Okay, second point. My costs are way down. Instead of certainly when compared to Heroku, when I was on Heroku, like to get my app to any reasonable speed, I needed like multiple dynos and backend dynos, and I'm paying for it to exist the whole time. And there is some auto scaling I can do there, but it was like a minimum of, I think, I don't know, $100 a month for an app of any reasonable size. Versus on Firebase, because everything is scalable, you get billed in units of like 100 milliseconds of execution, or for the database, you get billed fractions of a penny for each read and write that you do. The cost of throwing up a side project is free, and then as soon as it gets any sort of meaningful usage, it costs almost nothing. If you get to the point where projects start costing any sort of meaningful amount, like $10 or $20 a month, that's a huge amount of scale that basically has created this environment where I don't really care about the cost of infrastructure because it scales perfectly smoothly with the amount of usage. And if I'm building anything that is making me money in any way, the cost is effectively negligible. That's point number 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly interesting. Everyone loves keeping costs down. A couple things I would like to hear more about, or might drive the point home more, is where does this break down? So there's certainly some apps, like I'm thinking like, real time. I used to do real time location tracking for IV pumps, right? So you have 10 hertz updates for 1,000 different things. That's a lot of writes to a database. Does the cost, swing wildly higher that way? The other thing in terms of costs that I think people are scared of with auto scaling things is accidentally getting a bill for like $1,000.
Yep.
So how can you prevent that? Stuff like that.
That's a point I'm about to cover under disadvantages.
Excellent.
Yes. But before that, point number 3 in advantages is that I feel like I can build much more complicated things because this is all one integrated platform. Things like a system for sending templated email, or integrating Stripe for that's a better example. Like integrating Stripe for subscription billing in Rails, I had to read a book about it. Granted, I did this in 2013. I'm not sure if there's an easier way now, but the process for integrating subscription-based billing from Stripe on Firebase literally takes 10 minutes. It's you hook up some API endpoints. The hardest part of it is like within Stripe, you got to select specifically which webhooks you're trying to send. But on the Firebase end of it, it's an extension that just works, and it knows where your users are, and it knows where to write documents to. That's not something I've seen on any other platform, because it's a platform as a service, they're able to write abstractions at the level of like the production, integrating with other APIs, scaling at that level. It makes stuff at that level so much easier. Other stuff at that level is like third-party OAuth integrations. They make it so that to add Google OAuth integrations is a click, and now people can log into your app with Google, and they have specifically with React plugins where, because the front end supports all the different types of OAuth logins and the back end does and the database layer does, you can literally, if you want to add Facebook logins, you just enable it in the front end and you change one line of code that says, also add for OAuth logins that Facebook is another option. Now you have Facebook as an OAuth login. And that's like, for Rails, things like Devise exist, but it's a lot more nuanced than just a single click to add those sorts of integrations. So that's my third point. It enables you to build much more complicated things. Oh, one other point on that is things like real-time updates. I remember that being really hard in Rails. Like, you sort of have to bend your mind around the action cable stuff, and you got to be thinking much more about, well, okay, this specific part of my app needs to live update, and so here's how I'm going to do the messaging, and you just get that completely for free with Firebase.
Cool. I like the very specific examples. I think most people at some point have had to do either billing or OAuth or, things like that. That can be very complicated. So yeah, I like those specific points. My one question is, sure, once you know everything, it's very quick, but what's the ramp up time to get there? If the ramp up time is a few months, then, I might as well just spend the 2 days, putting billing in my old app.
Sure.
So yeah, what's the ramp up time in order to get very quick at those things?
There, especially for someone like you who already has apps on Rails, like it's a significant cost to change the platform that you're on. Like, for me to get here required me completely rewriting my entire app, right? Like, you have to write this with Firebase in mind. It's not like you can just swap out the database you're using. You really have to rebuild it from scratch. So yeah, the cost in that respect is significant. Yeah, okay. I need to think about that more. Let's talk about disadvantages. The shining disadvantage is vendor lock-in. Google, in particular, is infamous for shutting down services. They recently did this with Google Domains, which I haven't even looked into what the implications of that are for me. And most of my domains are owned on Google Domains. That sucks.
It means you're now a Squarespace customer. That's what it means.
Okay. Is that it?
I think so.
Okay. Like, the cost is going to be the same? I imagine I'm going to log in a different place.
I have no idea. But okay. I know they basically sold off that part to, I think it was Squarespace, right? I'm not, am I wrong about that?
I don't remember.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. They basically sold off that whole thing.
Okay. Firebase is not open source. So in the event that Google decides, you know what, everything costs 1,000 times more and you have 7 days to make a change, like, I'm going to be screwed. Right. I'm dependent on and trusting Google, who has demonstrated that they're untrustworthy. And that's a significant risk. My vague backup plan is to use a similar service, something like Supabase, which is they're funded by Y Combinator, and they're specifically trying to be an open source Firebase alternative. But the cost of switching is not going to be nothing. Like, there's other assumptions, there's other setup, there's the Supabase platform works in a different way than Firebase does. It's not going to be just like, swap out this one file and now you're using Supabase instead of Firebase. There's significant work that would need to happen to swap that out. That is disadvantage number one.
Yeah, that's a big disadvantage. The other ones, like, there are other companies like Netlify and Vercel, both have back-end functions which are sort of similar to Firebase functions, slightly not as well integrated, I think, but so you can list the alternatives there. But it's a major disadvantage. Yeah.
Cool.
I also thought, just like Doku is sort of a self-hosted Heroku, I thought there was sort of a self-hosted Firebase. Maybe Supabase is the one I'm thinking of, but I thought there was a project trying to be basically a self-hosted Firebase.
You're probably thinking of Supabase. Yeah. In the early days of Firebase, there was Firebase, and there was another technology called Parse, Parse. And
yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, that was also open sourced. So, and then that one shut down. So for a while there were like self-hosted versions of Parse that because when they shut down they open sourced all their stuff. Yeah. So that hasn't happened for Firebase. But that's the first disadvantage. Okay. Second disadvantage is that Firestore as a database is severely limited. It is a NoSQL document-based database, which is incredibly flexible and incredibly powerful, but it has these weird limitations, like you can only query on 2 attributes at a time. And if you're trying to and if you want to sort by an attribute, that has to be one of those 2 attributes that you're querying against. You kind of have to rethink especially if you're coming from Postgres and you're also making the transition to a NoSQL database, there's limitations where you kind of have to architect your app with Firestore in mind. You have to be preemptively thinking like, okay, how am I going to be querying this data to be able to build your app that in a way that is going to be supported by Firebase. That's disadvantage number 2.
That makes sense. Just like before, you had some specific examples of features that were easy to add. Maybe have specific examples of like where, like SQL breaks down when switching to Firestore. So like maybe there's some common example of date filtering or something that's particularly hard, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe a few examples of common things that are particularly difficult.
Full text search comes to mind. That's something that's particularly difficult. Although now there's extensions for that.
It's hard on SQL too.
That is hard on SQL also.
It's okay. No, it's easy, but it's hard to do in a performant way.
Yes. Yeah. One of the that's another pro of this actually. Like all of the solutions for Firebase-based solutions all assume that you need to do this in a performant way. So the full text search solutions for Firebase are all very scalable, and they're all roughly of the format, tell us the document and the attribute that you want to do the full text search on, and then send that to a third-party service that can scale with you. Algolia, I think, is one of them. And then
which is expensive.
Yeah. Oh, and there's other ways that you can do that. You can do like Elasticsearch, I think, is one of them, and you can host that on AWS or something else. But yeah, okay. I'll include more specific examples there. Last one that I alluded to earlier, there's a danger of a gigantic bill. There are these horror stories of developers that have put their app up on Firebase, and then they get like a $10,000 bill that they racked up in like 2 days. There's no, as far as I can tell, there's no like standard automated way to put a kill switch in along the lines of, hey, if I have spent more than $500 this month, shut everything down. You can't do that. But what you can do is send yourself billing alerts at certain percentages of what you think your predicted billing is going to be. So in writing this article, I realized that I hadn't done a very good job of like setting up those automated alerts for myself. And so I pulled up Firebase and was like walking through the way to set up those automated alerts. And I saw that for, I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago, my bill was like 2.5 times higher than it should have been, and I didn't realize it. And so that was kind of spooky. Yeah. So, and I think it had to, I still don't know what it was, but I think it was one of my apps had some sort of a runaway function where it was doing a bunch of stuff it shouldn't have been doing. I don't know why. But that was sort of wake up call of like, okay, what should this system be? And so I talked through this in the article of like specifically how to set up these alerts. And I changed it now so that the alerts go directly to my Apple Watch. And they also get CC'd to Sarah, my wife, and my assistant. And I'm going to have conversations with both of them of like, hey, if you start seeing emails coming to you like every 10 minutes that say, hey, 110% of your billing threshold has been crossed, 120% of your billing threshold has been crossed, 130% of your billing, like you need to get in contact with me. And I would love to have for each of them, like if I'm in a coma and I can't, you haven't had the conversation with me, if I'm in Iceland and I don't have cell reception, here is a place where you can go. That's the kill switch, where you go to this website and you
press this button,
and then you confirm it 8 times, and then that's going to shut down everything on Google that I have access to. That's the system that I'd like. But yeah, that is scary with any sort of serverless thing that can infinitely scale.
Yeah. So this is one of the bigger cons in my mind, because I'm about to go to Iceland. As far as I know, I only get internet when we get to the hotel every night.
Yeah.
And there's basically nothing in between. What happens if I'm just gone for a day and I have some, runaway function?
Yeah.
Also scary that you can't auto shut down. I mean, that seems crazy. Also, if you write some infinite function during development, you just may have some random thing. And like by the time you get the email that you have 100% billing, if it's an infinitely recursive function, like maybe you're already at $1,000. Like,
yeah,
I would for sure want to see more, if not automated, at least fail-safe ways to mitigate this issue. Yeah,
I just had the idea that I could build a SaaS.
Because you've had the idea, I'm sure someone else has too. So
I haven't actually looked for any of those. Yeah, but the thing that I would want is to be able to just plug it in, like third-party billing alerts that will automatically shut down everything when it crosses a certain threshold. And I would set that threshold to be high the argument that Google gives that's a little bit of baloney is like, well, what if you're on the front page of the New York Times and you're you get a whole bunch of users all at the same time. And I get that, but yeah, I think the service I would want is I would want to be able to set up, okay, for these thresholds, notify me in every way that I can possibly be notified, and have these other people as backups to notify. And if I don't respond, yes, keep everything online. Default to, in whatever, half an hour, whatever threshold I set, to just shut everything off. Specifically, if it can be more specific, if it can shut down only the things that are having those runaway functions, if it can be more specific of like, okay, it's this function in particular that's running up all your billing, let's just shut down that function. That's the product I would want.
It would also be great if you're on the front page of the New York Times, you could detect that with traffic. And like, if you have lots of traffic coming from lots of different people, either you're being DDoSed, in which case, I don't know, set up Cloudflare or something, but
right.
Or you're getting tons of users. In that case, fine. Spend $1,000 to get 1 million users, fine.
Right.
But if it's one function I wrote that's calling itself forever,
right,
then shut that down right away.
Right.
So yeah.
Cool. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. That was very good feedback. I feel like I can make a much better article now. Cool. That's all on Firebase. I will update you as I continue writing the article. I think I just have one more thing I want to talk about, which is a project I'm calling Dad Hobbies. I feel very envious that my wife has this in-person group that she's able to socialize with. It's a bunch of friends that she does gymnastics with. And it's a group of women who she is in a similar life stage with, that she shares a lot in common with. And I'd like that for me. Like, they go out and do stuff, and they watch gymnastics movies together. And I don't have that sort of in-person network. I have a lot of internet friends, but I don't have people who I go and like we regularly do this thing, and it's a little physical, so I'm getting exercise at a baseline. So I'm experimenting now with 3 different possible ways that I could do that. The first is biking. I really enjoy riding bicycles. I'm thinking, that's just a thing I'd like to be doing more at a baseline. It's a good way to commute in the city. A lot of times I can get places faster biking than I can while driving. I don't know what a social group for biking looks like though, but I think regardless, I want to get a bicycle, and I'm curious what bicycling groups might look like locally. The second thing is golf. I found out about I played golf recently in New York with my uncles and realized I love it. It's really fun. And it's meditative, and it's physical, and it's this technique, and I enjoy it. And so I went to a golf store this weekend and found out about a thing called the Golf Team that you can just join. You like Google and search, and they'll email you and say, hey, we're all going to go to this golf course that's local, and if you want to join, pay us this amount of money, which is some discounted rate from what they would usually charge, and then you'll have people within our team that you can go golf with. And then the third thing is Sarah got me a compound bow for Christmas that I hadn't used until yesterday, and I found a really great specialized bow shop that adjusted it and gave me a bunch of stuff that I need for it. And that was super fun. And I was able to hit a target 20 yards away, which I didn't realize I was able to do. It was pretty cool. And I think there's competitions and other social things there. So of those 3, I think golf probably has the highest chance of being a good method of socialization. But it's an ongoing project for me of trying to figure out what are some dad hobbies I could do where I can be connecting with other people in the same sort of way and with the same sort of network that my wife has with gymnastics.
Cool. Yeah. Very interested to hear updates on that. I'd try them all, see what sticks. That's what I think basically any hobby, any activity, I think can be a social one if you find the right group of people. So, golf has the advantage where you're on a course for 2 or 4 hours or whatever, depending. And so you're sort of forced to talk to people. And so maybe that's good in this situation, but the other 2 I think could be all, as well. When I first was doing the meeting place, or just meeting place, not the cycling and running groups and hiking groups were very big. I think I got on some list, and so a lot of them signed up. And those all seemed like they would cycle for an hour, and then they would meet at a bar afterwards or something, and that was they did that every Saturday or something. So yeah, I think any of those activities sound like they could be good social activities.
Cool. I'll check out some cycling groups on meetingplace.com. See if there's any in Dallas. Yeah, any activity can be a social activity.
You could, but Meeting Place shut down if you.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Check out Meetup.
Okay, I'll check out Meetup. Yeah, any activity can be a social activity. I like that. So just anything I want to be doing, I think I want to be looking at it with a framing of how can I be doing this with other people who also want to be doing this thing. Like when I got my 3D printer, I treated that mostly as a solitary activity of just like, I'm having fun with my toys. And I think it would have been more fun if I'd been connected to a network of other people doing similar things.
Yeah, even 3D printing, like here in Indianapolis, there's a group kind of far from me, so I'm not part of it, but like they have a place where people bring their 3D printers and stuff. They also have like a full metal shop and a full like a wood shop, and they go there on Saturday and like build projects and stuff. So even something that is a solitary activity can be social in that way. Yeah,
cool. A few really, really tiny updates to close off. My weight is still at 183, which is exactly what it was last week. So I think I need to be a little more serious about like upping exercise, more caloric restriction. My private chef rotating group thing is going really well. I really I'm getting it more systematized of how I organize the recipes and how I have ChatGPT summarize it for me to make those. And yeah, that's been going really well. And then I'm also experimenting with working at coffee shops, which are like really cheap co-working spaces. I find it's very focusing, and it's also just a fun change of scenery to go out, and I feel like there's a subtle social pressure of like, oh, everyone here is working and doing stuff, so I guess I should do that too. There were, while I was working there this morning, there were like a dozen different instances where I felt the sort of itch of like, oh, let me get up and go take a break or something. And I didn't do that because of just the extra little added friction of that I'm not at home. So it's harder to do that. So I just kept working and got a lot more done on the work I was trying to do. So yeah, that was fun. Those are my updates from this last week.
Cool. Sounds like things are going well. I'd be interested to hear that, because coffee shops can be another place where you can meet people. So
true.
Yeah, if you go to essentially a co-working space and you see the same people over and over, then that might be something interesting. Yeah. I just did a bunch of research about weight plateauing. My weight has also plateaued, but I know why. It's because we had pizza twice, and then I went out on Saturday. So, but if you want some advice about what to do with a weight plateau, I'm happy to share resources.
Oh yeah. What do you have a summarized thing if I should be doing anything differently?
There are things that have been shown clinically to help. So there's certain spices, things like apple cider vinegar, which sounds totally made up, but apple cider vinegar before a meal blunts the blood sugar spike, seems to help. Also, it's gross, and so people tend to eat less after drinking it. So there's that. The other one that actually is big, if you can remember to do it, it's really helpful, is just have 2 glasses of water before a meal. It just makes you eat less because you fill up with water. Stuff like that.
Cool. Okay. I'll try that. I used to do apple cider vinegar shots for health because my mom read a book about that. It's this miracle drug that just makes everything better. That's probably not true, but yeah, I'm familiar with apple cider vinegar.
It has been clinically shown to help drop weight.
Okay.
I would say don't take it as a shot because you can actually chemically burn the inside of your esophagus.
Oh, okay.
So mix it with water and then take it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Noted.
Or tea. I had it in tea. So like a teaspoon or 2 in tea actually kind of tastes good. You can also have it like on a salad. Just it doesn't have to be apple cider vinegar either. Any vinegar. It's the acetic acid that matters.
Do you mix it with honey or sugar or anything, or just the apple cider vinegar?
For the tea, I have a hibiscus tea that has like blueberries in it, so it's not sweet, but it's in that vein anyway. And so the vinegar with it actually it doesn't taste awesome, but it does satisfy the sort of itch I have for really acidic Coke. Like that does the same thing to my mouth. So it's kind of like a fruity Coke in that way.
Cool. Noted.
Yeah. You can also, if you like salads, we found one of those fancy olive oil places near us that also sells vinegar. And if you get a really good balsamic, we have a fig balsamic that we bought. You don't need any oil. We just use the vinegar for the salad dressing. So it's the vinegar, so it's the acetic acid, and it's super low calorie because it's just vinegar. And it actually tastes really good as salad dressing. So you could do that too.
And it's just all forms of vinegar. The acetic acid is the core thing that's important. I'm realizing I don't think I have any vinegar in my diet right now. I don't think there's any. Like, I didn't do any meal prepping with vinegar. I'm not putting vinegar on any sorts of salad. Okay, yeah, I'd like to.
Vinegar can also really help if you're trying to lower your salt. I'm not, because my blood pressure is fine. But if you have high blood pressure and you want to lower salt, you can basically add either vinegar or citric acid, so lemon juice, lime juice, that kind of thing. It does the same thing to your tongue that salt does. So it's a salt-free way to get more flavor.
Oh, I forgot lemon juice was a form of acetic acid. I am having a lot of lemon juice.
No. Lemon juice is citric acid. So
citric acid. Okay.
They actually compared acetic acid to citric acid, and the acetic acid helped, and the citric acid didn't help.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Noted. I'd like to introduce more vinegar in my diet. That sounds like it'd be an improvement. Cool. Chris, that's all I got.
Cool. That's all I got, dude.
Then my stop button's not ready. There we go. Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.